so much. I'm delighted to be here. I think those of you who know me even a little know that chaplaincy is one of the things that I'm really particularly passionate about. Another role that I hold with the Free Churches Group means that I've worked alongside chaplains and been promoting and seeking to resource chaplains for a long time. I speak now as president of the Methodist Conference with great joy, 6 months into the year, with 6 months almost still to go, about the variety of chaplaincy that I have been introduced to. I make that point quite deliberately because I'm really encouraged that when district chairs are putting a programme together for us, when Carolyn and I visit, their question to themselves is actually what should we show the president and the vice president, and they're increasingly showing us chaplaincy, and I hope that that thrills you as it thrills me. I know that some of the people on the screen are those whose ministry I've seen, but I have had experience in the last 6 months already of chaplaincy in rural communities and at animal marts, city centres, more than one, projects where people are actually doing really innovative things, some with a building, some without a building, and that's quite interesting itself. I've been in a control tower at an airport, something I never thought I'd get to do. At Luton Airport, I've visited the Navy. I've been moved by the work with seafarers that the Methodist Church is involved in, schools and universities, and I could go on, and I hope that in the next 6 months there's even more of that. This led me, unfortunately, to suggest that we might have a competition as to where the most unusual place or least expected place we might find the Methodist logo. And I had mentioned it because at the Tilbury docks, where I'm hoping to visit next month, actually a chaplain from the Queen Victoria Seamen's Rest has established, with the help of the Methodist Church and QVSR, a rest centre on the dockside for seafarers who, in between cruises and sea visits, have nowhere to go for privacy, to make a private phone call, to be able to relax, and they're not allowed in the accommodation that the cruise ship passengers might use. And so there's the Methodist Church providing rest and restoration for those who are not paid huge amounts. And I just thought that was a really good example of thinking creatively about what people's needs were. Carolyn has helpfully talked about what led us to that verse from Isaiah. And I continued to say what was important to me about it is that it's actually really clear that justice isn't a noun, it's a verb. There are things that we must do in order that justice can be established or re-established, or oppression can be challenged. And I have all the way through said it's really important that when we listen to the prophets, and sometimes the prophets are within the organization, sometimes they're inside the church, sometimes they're outside the church, that we realize that any system, grouping that we belong to is capable of injustice. And that's why trying to be a justice-seeking church is so important. We have to examine constantly the privilege that we might or might not take for granted. For me, what's been key is comment by James Baldwin, who in the area of racial justice speaking and reflecting on the death of his three friends, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Medgar Evans, made this comment that I have found so helpful. Not everything that is wrong can be changed, but nothing can be transformed until it is faced. There's something there about truth-telling, bearing the truth, speaking truth to power, that I think is encapsulated particularly within the role of chaplaincy. And indeed, we've already had the story on the video from Kim about actually trying to advocate for someone experiencing menopause but being frightened to raise it with work colleagues and those who have power as bosses. There is something particular about chaplaincy, and I'll be interested, I hope that in the smaller groups you can discuss this together. There is something about chaplaincy which doesn't wait for people to come to you, but actually goes out seeking where people are and spending time with people in their context, whether that's a university, Christmas Day, whether that's an asylum seeker, whether that's actually somebody who's a shop worker. Spending time paying attention to people and their contexts. We do that because that's what God does for us. It's what the incarnation is all about. And it's what we would call the scandal of particularity is all about. Jesus is born into a human family under occupation. Jesus is a refugee in the early weeks of his life. Jesus is raised in the north. He's the child of a family where there is a carpentry business. Jesus belongs somewhere. Jesus has particular relationships and he belongs to a community. And I just love it that chaplaincy actually doesn't just wait for anybody to come, but actually goes and seeks people out and addresses that particularity of people's lives. Does somebody feel comfortable in their workplace? Is somebody getting the advice that they need in their asylum application? It actually addresses that whole question that nothing can be transformed until it is faced. And that gets us to Mary. I'm so glad that Mel read the Magnificat magnificently. Part of the church talks about Mary. Methodists might struggle with this a bit, but the Orthodox part of the church would describe Mary as Theotokos, the bearer of God, the one who carries God within. Now, I don't struggle with that because I've just said my covenant prayer. And I know that in John's Gospel, we're invited to abide in God and that God abides in us. So, of course, we're God bearers. We're invited to carry God in our hearts and lives with us wherever we are. And I think that's what chaplaincy is about. So there's something about the scandal of particularity, but there's also something there about we are each of us called to be those who bear God with us wherever we are. So that actually means that faith, mission, ministry cannot be restricted into the life of the local congregation. It's got to spread out and it's got to seep into every aspect of our lives. The church without walls is the church that excites me the most. Now, I will be interested for you to reflect on what the joining up points, what the points of connection are between chaplaincy as a mode of ministry. That there is a specialism about chaplaincy. There are skills of chaplaincy, there's resourcing of chaplaincy, there are really brilliant formal qualifications that can be achieved in chaplaincy. But there's also something inherent about discipleship and chaplaincy, which the whole church needs to learn from our chaplains, about the confidence to know that they are like Mary, bearing God within them, and that where they are, God is also, and that means the love of God that they carry within them, they have the capacity to share wherever they are. I want to thank everyone for all that they do. I was about to say some old friends on the screen. I'm learning to say friends I've known for a long time. None of us are getting any older, I'm quite sure. But there are years and years of absolutely brilliant chaplaincy on this screen from people who I know are working in some of the toughest environments and seeking in those environments to make the love of God known and available to others. So thank you for what you're doing.